Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kinnett. Today I'm going to show you how to make a templating or what they call an L fence for your table saw. A very handy accessory, and it uses one of my favorites, the magnetic switches. So let's get started. Well, I've got a little bit of a head start. I've cut a few of the pieces, but one of the critical parts I have not cut yet, and I left that so that you could see how I go through this process. Now, before I go any further, I want to check the moisture content. This is going to be my new alternate fence, and I need to make sure that the wood is not going to move on me. So the moisture content wants to be typically below 10%. And this is 5.7, 5.6, so that's fine. That's perfect. Okay, my fence is 3 1/8, so that's the width that I need to cut this plywood at. The other thing I need to do is measure the height of this to get the depth of the blade. And I'm going to see if my measuring blocks will measure that distance for me. You can see that's a little bit on the high side. Let's try the next one and see what that's. Oh, that's perfect. Now, the nice thing with cutting rabbets this way is this little piece of wood here is not going to shoot out the back here because it's not trapped between the fence and the blade. So it should just fall off, but we'll see what happens with it. All right, let's try that now. Oh yeah, look at that. That's perfect. Okay, the next thing I need to do is a little bit of a mock-up of what this jig is going to look like. So there's the two uprights, and I still need to do some trimming on those. This, of course, is going to be my fence, and this is going to be my new adjuster, and the fence will be fastened to the adjuster here, and then I'll use some hanger bolts. So I'm going to have to put some slots in here, and these will be fastened down. I'll put some hanger bolts in there, and I'll be able to move that up and down. Okay, put those and check, see how they fit. Now I'm just over at the drill press. I need to drill some pilot holes for these hanger bolts. And I've already set my little adapter that I put on here, this little jig for the depth gauge. And I'm going to run it down to 1 inch. And while I'm at the drill press, I might as well drill 2 holes for the mag switches. And all that is mark front and back. I'm just going to use this plastic lid here, and that way I'll get them all the same. And I'll just do I don't know if you can see that sort of a transition there, and I'll just take that over to the bandsaw and cut that off. And I'll just do that off camera. Now I'm at the point where I'm getting ready to attach these uprights, and I have them all nicely marked, and I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive some screws up from the bottom. Okay, that's coming along really good. That's almost finished. And what I'm going to do in this case, I've got this little piece of wood here that I can use as a marker. And I'm going to fasten that fence on so that it has a little bit of a lip at the bottom there. So the first thing I need to do is to make sure I have a good fit with my mag switches, and there can't be any dust in there. You want a nice clean. It probably goes without saying, but depending on the type of fence you have on your table saw, clamps might work better than a mag switch. Okay, now I'm going to take a moment and show you how this L fence works. Back in the day when I first made these, which is probably 20 years ago, I've moved twice since then, and I don't know where the original one went to. We used to call them templating fences. So I'm going to show you how this works. So first of all, I'm going to move the blade right down underneath, and what I want to do is I want to raise the L fence above the material, and I've got a couple of thin little pieces of wood here, so I'm going to raise it up there so that it's just above the material, and I'm going to lock the fence. Okay, now the next thing I want to do, I want to raise the fence, or sorry, raise the blade so it's just barely above the material. We always do that anyway. Now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to use some, you can actually, back in the day before I was using this, we used to tack it, we used to use screws to tack it in. You know what, with this anti-skid material, you don't even need to do that. What I'm going to do now, and I'm just taking an arbitrary, you could measure it out and make it nice and straight, but I'm just going to set that in there so that it's not going to catch the blade. And I'm going to overlay, if you look at that, I'm going to overlay this just about there. And now what I want to do, I'm going to move the blade underneath, just barely underneath the L fence. Now you can see that blade just barely underneath there. It's maybe a quarter of an inch or so. Now this is all I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to trim up this aspenite that I'm using here. It's just got a rough edge on it. So all I'm doing is trimming up a rough edge on it. And I don't have the top board. It's not tacked. It's only being held on with this anti-skid material. But watch how well this works. So there's my nice brand new straight edge, and that's because the edge, the templated edge here and the templating edge here are perfectly straight. But look at, because there is no fence pinching against it, the wood doesn't even, it just falls off like it should. It just fell off, it didn't come shooting back, and that's why this is such a handy fence, is because it's very safe to use. Now I'm going to show you, here's where we used to use it as a templating fence. One of the tables that I used to make a lot of, and I haven't made any for a few years now, it has, you can see that it's got sloped sides or angled sides, and it's very hard to cut angled sides on a table saw. There's various ways you can do it, but this is one of the safest ways, and the way we do that is by, I'll do the same thing with the aspenite here. I'm just going to set it to a bit of an angle, just like that. And now I can set this to the same angle. Now the only thing I have to watch for, because I've got a little bit of a narrow, I could have used a little bit wider board on here, I need to make sure that the wood here is not going to exceed, oh it's way under, is not going to exceed my capacity here. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and I can get a perfect angled cut here by using this L fence, this templating fence, and run that through the saw. So let's have a look at that. And there's the material, and it didn't shoot out the side, out the back. And there's my angled piece. Let's move that out of the way. There's my angled piece. So I've set my fence here so that it's equal on both sides, the distance out and the distance up. And I'm just going to flip this scrap piece of wood here so you can see how to do a rabbet. Now you can also use it to cut tenons. I'm not going to do that, but you can see easily how that works. It butts up against that, and you flip it over and run the same thing through, and that way you get nice clean shoulders on your tenons. Well, that concludes my video for today. How to make a templating fence or an L fence. And if you need to cut any kind of wood at an angle, this is something you might want to look at. I'm Colin Cadet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.